AI will not replace ASO anytime soon. The human touch will be needed for at least 3 to 5 years, I think. But the landscape and the function will be very different from what it is today.
Welcome to Apptivate, the mobile marketing podcast brought to you by the app retargeting experts at Remerge. Listen to what's working in mobile marketing today from the people who are doing it now.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Apptivate. I'm your host, Patrick Eichmann, and today I'm joined by my special guest here. Allow him to introduce himself.
Hey, my name is Yevhen Tarasenko, and I'm the CMO and co-founder of Apptonomy, and also an app growth consultant with over a decade of experience.
Awesome. Sounds good. I think we're going to have a good conversation. So before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about the listener base of this podcast, right? So we're a podcast for mobile marketers. Remerge is a mobile DSP, performance DSP. And so lots of times we have folks that listen to this podcast come from that world. So they spent a lot of time working with DSPs and maybe some of the walled gardens. But ASO is a really interesting topic that we don't give enough time to that we probably should. And so in preparation for the interview, I was taking a little look at your background, and it seems like you've spent 10, 12 years in this space. And you had an interesting kind of migration. You went from working with publishers themselves, like working for Tilting Point and other places, to building your own platform. And so maybe I thought we could start the conversation today that around that topic, like what got you into ASO, the evolution of doing this hands-on for yourself, to eventually the evolution of creating your own business and platform.
Yeah, sounds good. So I started ASO back in 2013. So it's going to be 13 years in October 2026. And it was not coincidental, but somewhat random. I started my career as SEO specialist, internet marketing, SMM, what have you. And then after a couple of years, I just got this random message on Upwork. Was Odesk back then, I think, with an offer to try some ASO as a freelancer, because it was very similar back then. It was mostly keyword based. So I decided why not, and yeah, I stayed there until now. And back then it was super manual, super dark woods, no expertise, no podcasts, no videos, no LinkedIn presence of the gurus of today. So yeah, people back then had to figure out everything by themselves, and it was pretty tough, but also pretty interesting.
Yeah. I'd imagine so. I mean, it's probably like what we'd say in the States, like the Wild West, where everything is just kind of coming together. Everyone's learning at the same time. There's not a lot of standards yet in some ways,
Yeah.
but so talk to me a little bit about then that change. You were kind of on the publisher side working with, titles from Tilting Point, Fun Plus, et cetera. What motivated you from being hands-on with those titles to building your own tool? What pushed you in that direction?
Well, quite a couple of things, because at those companies I specialized at building departments like ASO as a function or organic growth as a function, and I started thinking more systematically, and that thinking transferred pretty well to my process as an ASO expert and the process of how my team operates. And we started with automation with AI specifically in the early days was it end of 2022 with GPT-3 or something like that. So we did some first steps, and I saw a lot of potential in that. But then when I left my last place of like corporate job, I decided to go freelance a little bit, because yeah, it just made sense to switch around a little bit. And in parallel, I tried to optimize and automate my process, because basically, why not? Why not
Sure.
being more efficient if you can? And I started playing around with sort of very simplistic, very basic setups in Perplexity or other tools. to just streamline my processes for different apps and clients. And the reason why it was very simple, because AI changes every month. Like now we're using Claude, next month we're using ChatGPT or something else, and the quality standards with AI are not quite there, as well as the interfaces and all sorts of APIs and tech. It's ever changing. So it was very hard for me as relatively non-technical person to build a concrete system. But nevertheless, I built pretty good pipeline for myself. And then I started posting about it because I was talking to people at conferences or different events. And they were asking me, like, what do you do for automation? So I decided to post a couple of posts on LinkedIn and then Substack about what exactly did I do to automate the process, starting from the analysis and audit and ending with the reporting part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I do want to come back to a couple of things there. We talked about AI usage and then conferences, and we were talking offline a little bit about our experience last week in Las Vegas. But before we get to all that, maybe just taking a step back, could you, for the listeners that are not aware, could you give us just like a quick pitch for your company itself, Apptonomy, and what you guys focus on from an ASO perspective?
sure. Yeah, and it fits nicely as a continuation of my personal story. So I posted this guide on Substack called How I Automated 40% of My Workflow in ASO. And it was spotted by my now co-founder, Thomas Bernal Fisher, who also had some tools for ASO he was starting. He's a very technical developer with over 20 years of experience at companies like Google and Netflix. But obviously, he didn't have a lot of ASO experience. And he saw the article on Substack and he was like, okay, this is what I want to build. Let's do this. Right. And it made a lot of sense because I had this urge to put this on Rails for myself to solve my pains and solve pains of a lot of people in the industry, which are, there are tools, but there are no good automated solutions that work as your sidekick, your day-to-day second brain, the reliable automation tool that actually drives the process, not just gives you the tons of spreadsheets or just raw information that you have to manually then process and then put to the stores and observe the results.
That's a pretty cool story. Like if you imagine if you didn't write that post, what would have
Yeah,
happened,
yeah.
you know? But that's pretty cool. So you write this post, this person, did you know them at all, or did they just completely randomly find your expertise and realize this is kind of what I need to be doing?
We exchanged a couple of messages previously because he was interested in ASO expertise out there, and he was talking to a couple of ASO experts on how he can improve or push forward his tool at the time. So it
Yeah.
was not like we didn't know each other, but we, by the way, until this day, we never met in real life. It was just on video. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, we need to
No.
catch up.
Yeah, maybe we could help facilitate that sometime. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about some of the pain points that marketers would have with ASO, and that you had found some ways of solving for that. What would be some of those common pain points that an end user would have with ASO that they're struggling with that you figured out how to work around?
Uh, to put it shortly, ASO, even in 2026, is still very manual and boring. And people are tired of, they kind of used to the process, but they're tired of doing the same thing all over again since basically 2018, more or less. It's not changing. There are incremental changes. Tools are introducing some new solutions as a build up on top of what they already have, but
Mhm.
it's not categorically different. So it's basically the same thing with more bells and whistles. And when I'm presenting Apptonomy to someone who knows about ASO but doesn't know about what we do, first question I'm getting, is this like the tool X? And the second question I have is this an AI wrapper?
Got it. Yeah, I was going to ask a question about that, right? So, the technology has evolved so much, and I use all the common bots essentially out there in my day to day life, whether it's work or home, and they are starting to make recommendations for apps themselves, depending on your search content and what you're looking for. How has that impacted your work?
Okay, yeah, it's a very good point. And this is something, the solution we have in our tool, but we didn't have it at the beginning. Like I didn't put it as a concept, at least for the first phase of the tool. So we call it AI discoverability. And what it does, it reads the app's description, the app's metadata on the market, and then it goes around all the LLMs and prompts them to see where the app stands in terms of visibility, the place that would be recommended, and similar parameters. And then we give you the guidance and advice on how to improve that situation. For example, a lot of apps that are working with us are not present on Reddit sufficiently, but that's like the driving force of the internet these days.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So what do you do about that?
Uh, the way the automated analysis in Apptonomy works, it looks at your online presence as a whole and then breaks it down by categories and compares the mentions. For example, what you're saying about on your app listing, what is said on the website, what people are saying on different platforms, on those listicles that are, I don't know, should be dead for a couple of years now. And then it tries to figure out what's the overall sentiment and impression about the app. And then we give you the concrete steps on how to improve the situation and how to improve your presence online in
Oh,
general.
God.
And that feature is a total hit.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That's pretty cool. So you're basically gathering that intel, feeding it back to the marketer across those platforms, and what they can do to improve their placement and how they show up.
Yeah,
I imagine most people as customers would take those changes, they would implement those changes, and then I'd imagine through your platform or your work together, you can measure the impact over time to how
yeah.
those changes have impacted how something is showing up thereafter.
100%. Yeah, we give you a proprietary score developed by me, and we also measure things like typical stuff from your console: impressions, downloads, conversion rate, and then we report on those changes, like how much did they positively influence the situation with your listing.
Last week was MAU in Las
Yeah,
Vegas, Mobile Palooza, if you will, as we would call it in the States.
didn't heard
Basically,
that one. Okay.
you could use it, but basically the whole mobile industry comes together for about a week in Las Vegas, and there's tons of meetings, there's tons of content. You had mentioned that this was your first time attending, and so I'd love for you to share with the audience maybe some of your feedback about the event from an ASO perspective, like the conversations you had. What were people struggling with, curious about? Even your predictions coming out of MAU would be kind of interesting to the audience.
Right. Yeah, it was my first time, and it was a rapid trip. I've been there for like 48 hours with, I think, 12 hours of sleep in total, maybe.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and there were quite a few ASO related companies and agencies. And the general sentiment is that AI will change the game in one way or the other. And we can think about it in two ways: how AI can influence the process that is present today in terms of ASO and organic growth, and how it impacts the discoverability on a higher level. So we are talking about web, and we are talking about the stores themselves. For example, Google had the I/O last week as well, and it was Gemini this, Gemini that, everything is Gemini, everything is AI. So it's very important to be prepared for that shift, which is already happening, and to make sure that your online presence, both on the web and on the app stores, is catering to the algorithms and to the AI that will get the information, the context about your app, and then put or not, depending on how good you are, you will appear in specific relevant categories out there. And obviously, if you've done a good job, you have more opportunities to get featured and build relationships with the representatives.
Sure. Well, would you go back? Was it that productive for you guys, for your team?
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's great. We were saying earlier that they're moving the location to the Bellagio Hotel, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
much nicer. So it should be great. So, um, well, I'll see you there for sure in about a year in person, and hopefully you can get your co-founder to come too. I'm just conscious of time, and I know you're a busy person, so I don't want to keep you too long. But one of I guess my last question for you is, if there's somebody on listening to this podcast right now that is just stepping into ASO, let's say that their responsibilities have expanded, they're really just getting their feet wet, so to speak, with ASO. What would be your, first piece of advice that you would give this individual who's just getting into ASO at this time, given all that's happening with all the aforementioned bits and pieces that you walked us through?
I'll give three if you don't mind, because yeah, they will build on top of each other
Sure.
gradually. The first one, learn the basics. That's non-negotiable. That's not gonna go anywhere, because even AI is good, magical, and can do a hell of a job for you for the most part. You cannot trust it. So you need to know your craft, right? You need to be able to spot the inconsistencies or errors or wrong information, and you have to be certain in your ability as a professional to deliver quality results. If you don't have the foundation, it's not happening. And today it's quite easy to do. I don't know, in 6 to 12 months, you can be a pretty solid expert if you put your foot on the gas. The second thing is to be in the know of trends and all the changes with the stores, because there's a lot of opportunities popping up both on Google and Apple. And there's a lot of changes that you need to be aware of that might undo all the great work you were doing if you're not keeping up with what's the most recent in terms of policies. Yeah, and the final thing that builds on top of that is obviously use AI, because AI will not replace ASO anytime soon. The human touch will be needed for at least 3 to 5 years, I think. But the landscape and the function will be very different from what it is today. And in 2026, we already see that it's transforming a lot.
So if no, that's great. So I guess in closing, if anyone in the audience wanted to better understand maybe those changes in the App Store or continue the conversation any further, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best platform would be probably LinkedIn. Uh, I post a lot. I post a lot about Apptonomy, but I also try to put out some quality content about actually recent changes and new bells and whistles that you can use to improve the overall process and the results. And also, there are quite a few people that are probably smarter than me or more experienced, so we can put them in the show notes.
Yes.
And big shout out to ASO Stack Slack channel. By feature, I think that's the thing you should refer to when starting with ASO. It has over
Awesome.
5,000 experts, I think, at this point.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
I'm
you can
sure you're
start
one of
there.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining Apptivate. It was really nice meeting you. Enjoy the conversation, and hopefully we'll meet in person next year in Las Vegas.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And thank you so much for having me. I had some
Anytime.
fun. Yeah,
Take
thanks.
care.
That's a wrap on Apptivate, powered by Remerge, global leaders in helping apps drive growth and retention.